There's a stage in trading that nobody talks about honestly, a stage where 99% of traders fail not because they lack intelligence, not because they chose the wrong strategy, but because they couldn't handle what this stage does to their mind. This is the brutal stage, and if you're watching this right now, chances are you're either in it, about to enter it, or you've already quit because of it. What I'm about to share with you isn't just information, it's the difference between becoming part of that 99% statistic or joining the rare few who survive and transform into consistent, profitable traders. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you've been trading for a few months, maybe longer. You've learned the basics, watched countless videos, maybe even had a few winning trades that made you feel like you were finally figuring it out. Then something shifts. The wins stop coming as easily. You start second, guessing every decision. A trade that should work according to your analysis suddenly reverses and stops you out. You feel frustration building inside your chest like pressure in a closed container. You open another trade trying to make back what you lost, and that one fails too. Now the frustration turns into something darker, a cocktail of fear, anger, and desperation. Your hands shake slightly as you click the mouse. Your heart pounds when you see red candles moving against your position. Sleep becomes difficult because your mind replays every mistake, every missed opportunity, every dollar lost. This is the brutal stage, and it doesn't care about your education, your determination, or how badly you want to succeed. Most people think trading is about finding the right indicator, the perfect entry point, or copying what successful traders do. They treat it like a puzzle where if you just find the missing piece, everything clicks into place. But here's what nobody tells you until it's too late. Trading is 20% technical skill and 80% psychological warfare with yourself. The brutal stage exists specifically to test that 80%, to break down your emotional defenses, to expose every weakness in your character, every flaw in your discipline, every crack in your confidence. It's designed to make you quit. It's designed to separate those who talk about being traders from those who actually become traders. And the weapons it uses against you aren't complicated charts or market manipulation. They're your own emotions, turned against you like a traitor inside your mind. Think about the last time you took a loss. Not just any loss, but one that really hurt. Maybe you broke your rules. Maybe you held onto a losing position hoping it would turn around, watching your account bleed while telling yourself it's just a temporary pullback. Maybe you revenge traded after that loss, jumping into the next setup without proper analysis because you needed to feel like a winner again. In that moment, were you thinking clearly? Were you following your trading plan, or were you being controlled by emotion, by ego, by fear disguised as hope? This is what the brutal stage does. It puts you in situations where your emotional brain screams louder than your logical brain, where instinct overpowers planning, where short-term pain feels more real than long-term goals. I remember talking to a trader once who described this stage perfectly. He said it felt like being in a dark room where every step forward seemed to trigger another trap. He'd learn one lesson, fix one mistake, only to discover 3 more problems he hadn't even known existed. He'd have a good week and think he'd finally broken through, then the next week would destroy his confidence again. The worst part wasn't the losing money, it was the constant psychological assault. The feeling that maybe he just wasn't cut out for this, that maybe trading was for other people, smarter people, luckier people. He felt alone in his struggle because everyone online seemed to be winning, posting screenshots of profits while he was drowning in losses he was too ashamed to share. That isolation, that shame, that's part of the brutal stage too. It makes you feel like you're the only one failing when in reality 99% of traders are going through or have gone through the exact same torture. Here's something crucial you need to understand. The brutal stage isn't random. It's not punishment from the universe. It's not a sign that you're not meant to be a trader. It's a natural filter, a necessary process that exists to build something inside you that cannot be built any other way. Think about every skill you've ever mastered. There was always a point where it got harder before it got easier, where you hit a wall that seemed impossible to break through. Athletes call it the pain period. Musicians call it the plateau. In trading, we call it the brutal stage. The difference is that in trading, this stage comes with real financial consequences, real emotional pain, and real doubt that can destroy your confidence if you don't understand what's happening and why. The first weapon the brutal stage uses against you is fear. Not the obvious fear of losing money, though that's part of it. I'm talking about the deeper fears, the ones that whisper in your mind when you're about to click the buy button. What if this is another losing trade? What if I'm wrong again? What if I lose everything? What if I'm just not good enough? These fears create hesitation. You see a perfect setup according to your strategy, but you don't take it, because that voice of fear is louder than your confidence. Then, the trade works without you, moving in the direction you predicted, hitting the profit target you calculated, and you feel sick to your stomach. Not because you lost money, but because fear stole an opportunity from you. This happens repeatedly until you start doubting your strategy, your analysis, your ability to read the market. Fear doesn't just cost you money, it costs you trust in yourself. Then there's greed, fear's twisted sibling. Greed shows up when you're winning. You have a profitable trade open, it's approaching your target, but greed whispers, why take profits now when it could go further? So you hold. The market reverses. Your profit shrinks. You tell yourself it's just a pullback, it'll bounce back. But it keeps falling. Your profit becomes break-even, then becomes a loss. Greed turned a winning trade into a loser without you even realizing what happened. Or maybe greed appears differently for you. Maybe it's overtrading, taking more setups than your plan allows because you're on a winning streak and feel invincible. Maybe it's increasing your position size too fast because you want to accelerate your profits. Greed makes you believe the rules don't apply to you right now, that this time is different, that you've figured something out that justifies breaking discipline. But the market doesn't reward greed. It punishes it, often brutally and quickly. Let me tell you about revenge trading, because this is where many traders destroy themselves without even realizing they're doing it. You take a loss. It stings. Your ego is bruised. You feel like the market personally attacked you. So what do? You jump right back in, not with a calculated setup from your strategy, but with emotion driving the decision. You need to win back what you lost. You need to prove you're not a loser. You need to feel in control again. This isn't trading, it's emotional gambling. And the market has infinite patience to take everything from someone trading on emotion. I've seen traders blow entire accounts, not from one bad trade, but from the cascade of revenge trades that followed one reasonable loss. The brutal stage knows this weakness. It knows that one loss can trigger a psychological spiral that leads to 5 more losses if you can't control your emotional response. Now let's talk about overtrading, because this trap is subtle and deadly. You've probably heard that you should only take high-quality setups, only trade when all conditions align with your strategy. But when you're in the brutal stage, sitting and waiting feels impossible. The market is moving. Other people are making money. Every candle that forms feels like an opportunity you're missing. So you start finding reasons to trade. You lower your standards. You take B setups, C setups, setups that barely resemble your actual strategy. You tell yourself you're being proactive, staying engaged, gaining experience. But what you're really doing is gambling on impulse, burning through capital and mental energy, creating a pattern of undisciplined behavior that becomes harder to break the longer it continues. Overtrading is often a symptom of deeper issues: impatience, fear of missing out, need for constant stimulation, inability to tolerate boredom. The brutal stage amplifies these tendencies until they control you. Here's where it gets really interesting. The brutal stage reveals something about you that you might not want to face. It shows you exactly who you are under pressure. Are you disciplined or impulsive? Are you patient or desperate? Are you humble or arrogant? Can you follow rules when emotions are screaming at you to break them? Can you accept being wrong without letting it destroy your confidence? Can you be honest with yourself about your mistakes? Most people live their entire lives without ever being tested this way, without ever having a mirror held up that shows them their true character with such brutal clarity. Trading doesn't lie. Your account balance doesn't care about your excuses or your intentions. It only reflects your decisions, your discipline, your emotional control. And when you're in the brutal stage, that reflection is often ugly and painful to look at. But here's what the 1% who survive understand that the 99% never figure out. The brutal stage isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. Every loss is teaching you something about risk management. Every mistake is showing you a gap in your discipline. Every emotional reaction is revealing a psychological pattern that needs to be reprogrammed. Every moment of doubt is an opportunity to build genuine confidence based on process rather than outcome. The traders who survive don't avoid the brutal stage, they embrace it as their education. They understand that the market is the most expensive university in the world, and the brutal stage is where you pay tuition in losses, mistakes, and emotional pain. But the degree you earn, true trading mastery, is worth infinitely more than what you paid to get it. Let me share something that might change how you see your current struggle. Every successful trader you admire, every person whose results you envy, every mentor you follow, they all went through their version of the brutal stage. Some lost more money than you've even put into trading. Some blew multiple accounts. Some quit and came back years later. Some cried, some raged, some questioned everything about themselves. The difference between them and the traders who failed isn't that they were smarter or luckier or more talented. The difference is they made a decision, a conscious choice to view every setback as feedback instead of failure, to treat every loss as tuition instead of tragedy, to see the brutal stage as training instead of torture. They stopped asking why is this happening to me, and started asking what is this teaching me. Imagine for a moment that you're a soldier in training. The drill instructor is brutal, unforgiving, relentless. He pushes you past what you think you can handle. He doesn't care about your feelings or your comfort. He breaks you down systematically, physically and mentally. Why? Because when you're in actual combat, when bullets are flying and chaos surrounds you, you need to have already been broken and rebuilt. You need to have proven to yourself that you can function under extreme pressure, that you can execute despite fear, that you can maintain discipline when everything inside you wants to panic. The brutal stage is your combat training. The market is the drill instructor. It doesn't hate you, it's preparing you. But unlike military training, nobody is forcing you to stay. You can quit anytime. And that's exactly what 99% of traders do. They quit right before the transformation would have happened. There's a concept in psychology called learned helplessness. It happens when someone experiences repeated failure or punishment and eventually stops trying to escape or improve even when opportunities arise. They internalize the belief that nothing they do matters, that they're powerless to change their situation. This is one of the most dangerous traps in the brutal stage. After enough losses, enough mistakes, enough setbacks, you start to believe that you're just not meant to win, that the market is rigged against you, that profitable trading is a myth. This belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you can't win, you won't trade with confidence. You'll hesitate on good setups, you'll exit winners too early, you'll hold losers too long. You'll break rules because you've already decided they won't work anyway. The brutal stage feeds on this learned helplessness, using your own past failures to convince you that future success is impossible. Breaking free requires something that sounds simple, but is incredibly difficult. You have to separate your identity from your results. You are not your trading account. A loss doesn't make you a loser. A mistake doesn't make you stupid. A bad week doesn't define your future. Every single trade is just one data point in an infinite series of trades you'll take over your career. The outcome of any individual trade is almost meaningless. What matters is the process, the execution, the decision-making, the discipline. Did you follow your rules? Did you manage risk properly? Did you execute your plan? If yes, then that trade was a success regardless of whether it made or lost money. This shift in perspective, from outcome Focus to process, focused, is one of the most important mental transitions you'll ever make as a trader. Let's talk about something uncomfortable. Self-sabotage. Sometimes the brutal stage is so painful that part of your subconscious mind actually wants you to fail completely so you have permission to quit. It's a psychological escape mechanism. If you fail big enough, dramatic enough, then walking away becomes the logical choice rather than an admission of defeat. So you start taking bigger risks than your plan allows. You ignore obvious warning signs. You break rules you know are important. You're not consciously trying to blow your account, but part of you is creating the conditions for failure because failure feels easier than continuing to fight. Recognizing self-sabotage is crucial because you can't fix a problem you don't acknowledge. If you notice yourself consistently doing things you know are wrong, consistently breaking rules you understand are important, consistently choosing the path that leads to pain, you might be sabotaging yourself as a way to end the discomfort of the brutal stage. Here's a truth that might sting but needs to be said. Most traders are not prepared for trading. Not intellectually. They might understand charts and patterns and strategies. But emotionally and psychologically, they're children playing in an arena designed for mature, disciplined adults. Trading requires you to face your own limitations, to confront your ego, to accept responsibility for every outcome, to tolerate uncertainty, to delay gratification, to follow rules, even when breaking them feels more rewarding. These are advanced psychological skills that most people never develop because normal life doesn't require them. You can be impulsive, emotional, undisciplined in many areas of life without severe immediate consequences, but trading punishes these traits instantly and relentlessly. The brutal stage is where you either develop these skills or get eliminated. Let me tell you what survival looks like. It doesn't look like suddenly becoming profitable overnight. It doesn't look like never taking losses again. Survival looks like taking a loss and not letting it affect your next trade. Survival looks like following your rules on a day when breaking them would feel so much easier. Survival looks like closing your platform and walking away when you know your emotional state isn't conducive to good decisions. Survival looks like admitting mistakes without shame or ego. Just honest assessment and commitment to improve. Survival looks like trading the same way on winning days and losing days because your process doesn't change based on recent results. This is what the 1% who make it through look like, not superhuman, not emotionless, just committed to discipline over emotion, process over outcome, long-term development over short-term gratification. The brutal stage will test your relationship with money in ways you never expected. Money is emotional. It represents security, freedom, status, self-worth for many people. When you lose money trading, especially repeatedly, it triggers primal fears. What if I can't pay bills? What if people think I'm a failure? What if I'm wasting time and resources on something I'll never master? These fears are valid, but they're also dangerous if they control your decision-making. You need to reach a point where the money in your trading account is just a tool, a resource you're using to develop a skill. It's not your life savings even though it technically might be. It's not a measure of your worth as a person. It's capital you're willing to risk and potentially lose in exchange for the education and experience that comes from that risk. If you can't emotionally separate yourself from the money, if every loss feels like a personal attack on your security and identity, trading will destroy you psychologically. Here's something most educators won't tell you because it sounds negative. You might not make it. Not everyone who tries to become a trader succeeds. The statistics are harsh. 90% to 95% of retail traders lose money over time. These aren't people who didn't try hard enough or didn't care enough. These are people who wanted it badly, studied, practiced, invested time and money, and still couldn't bridge the gap between knowledge and execution, between understanding what to do and actually doing it consistently under pressure. The brutal stage eliminates most people not because they lack potential, but because they give up before that potential can develop. They quit days, weeks, maybe months before the breakthrough would have happened. They stop right before the lesson they needed to learn would have clicked into place. This should terrify you and motivate you simultaneously. Terrify you into taking the psychological work seriously. Motivate you to keep going even when quitting feels like the only logical option. Let me give you a framework for surviving that's practical and based on how human psychology actually works. First, you need to build what I call emotional scar tissue. Every loss, every mistake, every painful experience in trading makes you slightly more resilient if you process it correctly. The key is processing, not just experiencing. After every challenging trade or tough day, you need to sit down and consciously extract the lesson. What did I do wrong? What did I do right? What will I do differently next time? What does this reveal about my psychological patterns? This transforms pain into wisdom, losses into education, setbacks into stepping stones. Without this conscious processing, you just accumulate trauma without any growth. You become more scared, more hesitant, more damaged without becoming more skilled. Second, you need to develop what athletes call selective memory. You remember lessons from losses, but you don't carry the emotional weight. You remember the rules you broke and why it was a mistake, but you don't drag guilt and shame into your next trade. You acknowledge mistakes without letting them become part of your identity. This is a subtle but crucial distinction. Bad traders remember every loss emotionally and let it create fear. Good traders remember every loss analytically and let it create wisdom. Your memory of trading experiences should be stored like a textbook, factual and useful, not like trauma, emotional and crippling. Third, you need to create what I call process checkpoints. These are specific moments during your trading routine where you stop and consciously check in with yourself. Before opening a trade, ask yourself, am I following my rules? Am I trading on analysis or emotion? Is my risk management appropriate? During the trade, is my stop loss in place? Am I sticking to my plan or am I hoping and praying? After the trade, did I execute my process correctly regardless of outcome? What did I learn? These checkpoints create space between impulse and action, between emotion and decision. They force your rational brain to engage before your emotional brain hijacks the situation. Fourth, and this might be the most important, you need to redefine what winning means to you. If winning means making money on every trade, you'll be perpetually disappointed because no trader wins every trade. If winning means being profitable every week, you'll torture yourself during inevitable drawdowns. But if winning means executing your process with discipline, if winning means following your rules regardless of outcome, if winning means learning from every trade whether it makes or loses money, then you can win every single day regardless of your account balance. This redefinition removes the emotional roller coaster of results-based thinking and replaces it with the steady progress of process-based thinking. The traders who survive the brutal stage make this shift early. The traders who fail never make it at all. I want to talk about something that might sound philosophical but has massive practical implications. Trading is a game of probabilities, not certainties. Your strategy might win 60% of the time, which means it loses 40% of the time. Those losses aren't failures, they're mathematical inevitabilities. But your emotional brain doesn't understand probability. It interprets every loss as a threat, every mistake as danger. This creates a fundamental conflict. The reality of trading requires you to accept frequent losses and uncertainty. Your emotional wiring wants certainty and safety. The brutal stage is where these two forces collide. Your emotions scream at you to stop taking risks after a loss. Your logic knows that the next trade has the same probability as the last one and that stopping is irrational. The traders who survive learn to acknowledge their emotions, validate them, but not let them make decisions. They feel the fear, but execute the trade anyway. They feel the frustration, but follow the plan regardless. This is emotional intelligence in action. Let me describe what a breakthrough feels like for people who survive the brutal stage. It's not a single moment where everything suddenly makes sense. It's more like a gradual shift in how you experience trading. The fear is still there, but it's quieter, more manageable. The losses still hurt, but they don't devastate you emotionally. The wins feel good, but they don't make you overconfident. You stop obsessing over every tick of price movement. You stop checking your account balance every 5 minutes. You start trusting your process more than you trust your emotions. You notice you're making the same mistakes less frequently. You catch yourself about to break a rule and consciously choose not to. You have a bad week, and instead of spiraling into self-doubt, you review your execution, make adjustments, and continue forward. This is what the other side of the brutal stage looks like. Not perfection, but competence. Not fearlessness, but courage. Not constant winning, but consistent execution. Here's something nobody tells you because it sounds too hard. You might need to quit and come back. Sometimes the brutal stage damages your psychology so badly that continuing in your current state does more harm than good. Taking a break, stepping away for weeks or months, coming back with fresh perspective and renewed commitment, this isn't failure. It's strategic retreat. It's allowing yourself time to heal, to process, to rebuild the psychological foundation that trading destroyed. Some of the best traders I know quit multiple times before finally succeeding. They recognized that pushing through while emotionally damaged was creating bad habits and psychological trauma that would take years to undo. They had the wisdom to step back, the courage to return, and the humility to learn from their failures. If you're in so much pain that every trade feels like torture, if you've lost trust in yourself completely, if trading has started affecting your mental health, relationships, or physical well-being, there's no shame in taking a break. Your relationship with trading should be challenging, yes, but not destructive. Let's talk about community, because isolation makes the brutal stage exponentially harder. Trading is lonely. You sit alone making decisions that only affect you. You can't blame teammates when things go wrong. You can't share credit when things go right. This isolation is part of what makes it so psychologically demanding. But it doesn't have to be completely solitary. Finding other traders who are honest about their struggles, who share their losses, not just their wins, who support each other without judgment, this can be the difference between surviving and quitting. Not because they give you strategies or tips, but because they remind you that struggle is normal, that everyone goes through this, that you're not uniquely broken or incapable. The brutal stage wants you to feel alone. It wants you to believe that everyone else has it figured out while you're drowning. Breaking that illusion by connecting with others who are honest about their journey can provide the psychological support you need to keep going. I want to address something that's rarely discussed but incredibly important. Your self-talk, the internal narrative you run in your head about trading and yourself, is either your greatest asset or your worst enemy. After a loss, do you tell yourself you're stupid, that you'll never get this, that you should quit? Or do you tell yourself that this is part of the process, that you're learning, that every successful trader has been exactly where you are? Your internal narrative shapes your reality more than any external factor. If you constantly beat yourself up, sabotage your confidence, and predict failure, you're creating a psychological environment where success becomes almost impossible. The brutal stage amplifies whatever self-talk you habitually engage in. Negative self-talk becomes a deafening criticism that destroys confidence. Positive, realistic self-talk becomes an anchor that keeps you grounded and moving forward. You need to become aware of your internal dialogue and consciously reshape it to be honest but supportive, realistic but encouraging. Here's a perspective that might help when you're in the depths of the brutal stage. Think about how much you've already invested in trying to become a trader. The time spent learning, the money put into your account, the emotional energy, the sacrifice of doing other things you could have done instead. That investment is only wasted if you quit. Every moment you continue, every lesson you extract from mistakes, every small improvement in discipline or emotional control, that investment compounds. You're not starting over after each loss. You're building a foundation brick by brick. Some bricks are losses that teach you what not to do. Some bricks are wins that show you what works. Some bricks are moments of discipline that prove you're capable of control. You can't see the complete building yet, but every experience, is construction, not destruction. The traders who fail are the ones who look at the pile of bricks and see a mess. The traders who succeed are the ones who look at the same pile and see a foundation being built. Let me give you a final truth that encapsulates everything. The brutal stage isn't designed to be survived. It's designed to filter. It filters out everyone who isn't willing to face themselves honestly, who can't delay gratification, who won't follow rules consistently, who can't tolerate uncertainty and loss, who need external validation, who blame others for their failures. It filters out 99% of people not because they're not smart enough, but because they're not psychologically prepared for what trading demands. But here's the opportunity. Because 99% fail, becoming part of the 1% doesn't require you to be exceptional. It requires you to be persistent, disciplined, honest, and patient. It requires you to view every setback as education instead of evidence of inability. It requires you to separate your identity from your results. It requires you to play the long game while everyone else is chasing quick wins. If you're watching this, and you're in the brutal stage right now, you're facing a choice that will define your future. You can continue the way you've been going, hoping something changes while doing the same things that got you here. You can quit, walk away. Tell yourself it wasn't meant to be. Or you can make a decision right now to approach trading differently, to focus on process over outcome, to build discipline over seeking profits, to develop psychological skills with the same intensity you've applied to learning technical skills. That decision, that commitment to the psychological work, is what separates the 1% from the 99%. The brutal stage will keep testing you until you either quit or transform. There is no middle ground. You either break or you break through. And the only way to break through is to stop viewing this stage as something happening to you and start viewing it as something that's revealing who you need to become to succeed. The market doesn't need to change. Your strategy doesn't need to change. You need to change. And that change happens one conscious decision at a time, one disciplined trade at a time, one moment of emotional control at a time, until the person who started the brutal stage is unrecognizable to the person who emerges on the other side, stronger, wiser, capable, and finally, consistently profitable.